Thanks for tuning in to another episode of From Funding to Fame, where we interview the founders and funders currently raising capital on FrontFundr, as well as experts in the private capital markets. I'm your host, Trieste Redding, the head of campaigns at FrontFundr, and I'm excited to introduce more Canadians to equity crowdfunding. This podcast episode features conversations about a business's current operations and future plans, and as a result, may contain forward-looking information. There can be no assurance that forward-looking information will prove to be accurate, as actual results and future events could differ materially from those anticipated in such statements. Listeners should not place undue reliance on forward-looking information. Today, we are here with the president and co-founder of Fieldless, Jon Lomow. Fieldless is a modern Canadian food company and brand delivering food sovereignty and sustainability with products people fall in love with. They started by solving leafy greens in Canada using indoor agriculture technology to deliver exceptional products in world-leading packaging. Since building their first farm in 2019, they have grown to 11,000 customers, with monthly sales data showing approximately the same number of recurring customers through their retail locations. Here are some highlights. After significant problem solving and a long period of optimization, their lettuce farm has surpassed its production targets of 4.2 kilograms per bench per harvest on a continuous basis. Overall, their system has improved average monthly yields by 49% over the past 6 months compared to the prior period. They receive overwhelmingly positive emails from approximately 5% of their customer base, which is a high percentage for a category known to be a commodity. Of those emails, over 30% contain the words happy or love. 88% of their investors have reinvested in the company at least once. And in 2023, they assembled a group that was awarded $1 million from the Weston Family Foundation to develop and prove the capability of displacing imported strawberries 365 days a year. Hey, Jon, thanks so much for being here today. Welcome to From Funding to Fame. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Very excited to learn more about yourself, learn more about Fieldless. So perhaps to kick things off, you can introduce yourself and share a little bit about your background and what your careers look like so far.
Sure. I've had a pretty eclectic career, I think. I started out as a software developer in the late 90s. I worked on, sports betting sites and actually some of the first credit card gateways. Spent time in the marketing agency world, including starting my own as the CTO, and it was later bought by a larger agency in Canada. And then over that time, I spent some time with that new agency and crossed more onto the brand strategy side of things, and focused more on communications and honed that muscle quite a bit. Working on some really large retail brands, selling detergents and fast food and that kind of stuff. But I felt I needed something a little more impactful, so I left that world, and I actually spent a little bit of time in politics, supporting some candidates, and then I started a climate change policy think tank in around 2005. And around that same time, I also started a consulting firm focused on clean tech commercialization, which over the time, actually just became more about creating and working with purpose-driven companies with like a large social and environmental impact purpose to them. And I've spent time building organizations, everything from digital payments to transit infrastructure to clean energy and food and beverage. My kids have a really hard time explaining what I do. Although with Fieldless, it's become a lot easier because they just call me a farmer.
That's an incredibly diverse background that you've had throughout your career, and I can imagine kind of all the skills that you've developed that you're able to bring to kind of your role at Fieldless there. So I'd love if you can give us a bit of an overview of what Fieldless does, and maybe share a little bit about that moment of kind of inspiration or realization of the problem that led to the founding of the company as well.
Yeah. So Fieldless, works to solve food sovereignty and sustainability issues without asking consumers to sacrifice. I think a lot of that came from my philosophy around climate change as well, is that for true behavioral change, you couldn't demand sacrifice. You had to actually make people's lives better. Our early thesis with Fieldless was that, leafy greens were a huge problem. And both for consumers and individuals, consumers as individuals, but also for the country, right? And so we believe that building a company that solved that problem, created a platform on which you could build a really cherished brand. Over 90% of leafy greens Canadians consume come from California or Arizona. They're grown in massive fields, often next to livestock farms, which is where all the leafy green recalls come from. You get runoff from those livestock farms contaminated with E. coli or Listeria. A lot of people think growing in fields is a natural thing, and it really is far from natural. Those farms are 5,000 kilometers away from us, which means it takes really long for the product to get to our plates. And the nutritional value of plants actually starts to diminish the second that you harvest them. And so the longer it takes to get to your plate, the less nutrition in that food. So fixing all these problems, we believed early on would create a halo effect that you could cast onto a number of other products that you could build. So really build a what we call a branded house of products over time.
That's great. I think it touches on so many issues that are relevant today as well, in terms of kind of the objective behind founding the company. And I know you just launched a new product as well, which is great. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about those early days of the company. Were there any kind of initial hurdles that you faced? I know obviously you have quite a substantial kind of farming environment for this as well. So what were some of those challenges that you initially faced?
Yeah. So we did a first raise in 2018, relatively small compared to what we've done since then. But we built our first farm in 2019 and started to commission it in about March of 2020. And if, that date sounds familiar, I think a lot of people have it ingrained in their memories. That's when the
Yeah.
COVID lockdowns first started. So that was, I would say our first real hurdle. Those were crazy days. We were working, 18 hours a day, and the founders, were on the line harvesting and packaging, lettuce ourselves while also trying to work on the business. Um, and we were also trying to navigate at that time all the rules and the risks around COVID, and nobody really knew anything. So, it was those were pretty crazy days. Yeah.
No, I can only imagine. It's been kind of so many years now. Looking back, you almost forget kind of all the challenges over that period of time. But it was, a huge thing that so many businesses faced, especially those launching around that time. So definitely required a lot of perseverance there. And I guess during that time, what was it like going to try and find your first customers kind of through the pandemic?
Yeah. So, oddly, that was kind of the easy part. Despite some delays and stuff. But I uh, I typically like to write a press release ahead of time, like a fictional press release to sort of envision the words, that we want to achieve. And so I did that. And that press release had us launching with Farm Boy, who at the time was, a smaller retailer. They've grown quite a bit since then, but they were based. They were started in Cornwall, which is where we're from, and so we felt a bit of a kinship there and thought they were a perfect launch partner for us. And then Bridgehead, which if you're not from Ottawa, people may not have heard of them, but Bridgehead was like Ottawa Starbucks, and at the time was about 21 stores. Has since been bought a couple times, I think. But at the time, they served great salads, and we wanted to be the lettuce in those salads, and thought they were a great partner for us. And we really saw kind of splitting between food service and retail that way. And we had a great product. So honestly, like it wasn't a tough sell. Um, you know, so we did succeed. We in fact launched with Bridgehead just before COVID shut down all their stores. So we no longer after COVID that didn't last. We actually pivoted fully to retail because that was really the only channel at the time, and ultimately it was where we wanted to be anyway. So it worked out for the best, and it took a few more months because Farm Boy was kind of drinking from a fire hose, trying to figure out how to navigate all the supply chain disruptions they were dealing with. But they brought us on, started with 10 stores really quickly, just took us across their network. Today they're over 50 stores. They've grown quite rapidly and have been a really awesome partner. So I would say that was kind of the easy part, was getting the customers.
Wow, that's incredible. Certainly difficult times, but great perseverance that the company showed there. So appreciate you sharing more about that.
Mhm.
I want to come back to what you touched on earlier with kind of how much of the greens are currently coming from the US and kind of the idea of delivering more food sovereignty and sustainability with the products people love for Canadians. So with that, I know kind of your growing practices are different, your packaging is different, but maybe you can talk us through a little bit more kind of what sets you apart from the competition for those Canadian consumers who are seeking fresher, more sustainable produce.
Sure. Yeah. So we use technology to grow year round. We're a what we call a highly controlled environment farmer. And without that tech, we can't exist. Uh, but there's a lot of that tech. And it's more about how you integrate and how you use it. And for us, it's actually way more about the product experience than the technology that we use to grow that product. That's what sets us apart. It's that mentality, I would say. There has traditionally never been any brand loyalty in this category. There's never been a product that a brand could hang itself off of. There are, quote unquote brands that put their name on a product that could have come from any farm, right? It's a commodity at that point that some companies are trying to brand. Um, but you know, we put a product on shelves that people fall in love with, and that then you have something to build a brand off of. We get emails almost daily from fans of our products. It's quite astonishing, actually, that people take the time. Um, a big part of that product experience is obviously, as you mentioned, is the packaging. And we knew early on we needed to do better than the traditional plastic clamshells. We knew that was a pain point. We knew that retailers wanted it, and we knew definitely consumers wanted it. Um, and so, but those are tough to get out of.
Mm.
Those it's a lot of plastic, and some people say, well, it's recyclable, but actually, even though it has a number one recyclable logo on it, the number one plastic that it is actually a thermoformed version, which makes it really hard to be recycled. So the number ones, are still hard enough to be recycled. You make it thermoformed and it essentially does not get recycled. And so you need a better solution. Getting lettuce out of plastic is probably the hardest food to actually get out of plastic. Consumers want to see it. They turn it over because it goes bad quickly. And it needs a certain environment so that it doesn't go bad quickly. So if you actually just get it out of plastic completely, um, you know, you get so much waste, and now you it's counterproductive because you're creating greenhouse gas emissions from the waste. Um, so we worked for probably about 2 years to try and figure out what we thought was the best solution to that. And we came up with a solution, which if you go to our website you can read a lot more about it, but essentially it's a cardboard box that has a plastic liner that you peel off when you're done with it. The plastic still goes to waste, but it's 90% less, and so the cardboard can actually be recycled or composted. It's certainly not a perfect solution, and we don't profess that it is, but it is the best solution today. And we think that being authentic about that, goes a long way with the consumer as well. And it was super bold of us to do. As I said, people want to turn it over to see, whether it's rotten on the bottom, and so it was very bold to go to an opaque container like we did, and we knew consumers had to trust our freshness, and turns out they did, and they still do.
Oh, that's incredible. I think that's a great innovation. With produce, I think you often don't think about the packaging too much, but most of it is done through plastic still. And I've heard from some companies in the past that that can actually lead to it going bad quicker. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's interesting to see how much is done by plastic. Certainly not good for sustainability and the environment in the long run. So it's great to see that you guys are doing things differently. For investors who are listening today as well, maybe you can give us a brief overview of the different products that you currently offer. I know we haven't gone into too much detail about that yet, as well as detail a little bit about how the company currently makes money.
Right. So we sell branded products almost exclusively through grocery chains. We've got today 5 different SKUs, 2 lettuce mixes, kale, basil, and we're working on bringing spinach to market. We also sell specialty mushrooms today. Right now, just what we call shredded lion's mane mushrooms, and we're working on bringing some other mushrooms to market as well. Um, we're also working on a number of consumer product goods. So as I said, like we believe we can um, that the brand halo can be broadcast onto other products that really fit and leverage the ethos of the Fieldless brand. And so the first of those is going to be tin specialty mushrooms, which that category doesn't exist today. So we are inventing that category. The idea is mushrooms ready when you are, with great flavor profile, that you can just dump on a salad, which is a really nice complement to our greens. But also you can put on a charcuterie board, or actually throw into your pasta or put on a pizza. Super convenient and no spoilage because it's in a can and it has really long shelf life. So we're really like working to bring innovation to food products that reinforce and leverage the brand that we're building.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for giving a bit of context there. I think, yeah, the mushroom product is actually quite exciting the way you guys are doing that. That's totally different from I feel like anything else conceptualized on the market, which is awesome. And I do find mushrooms are one of those foods. Certainly, if you forget about it, it goes bad pretty quick. So the fact that you guys have a shelf stable solution to that is huge. I feel like that's a great innovation there in the industry for sure. Now, I know I mentioned earlier that you recently launched the new product, which was the basil that you had announced. Maybe you can give us just a bit of an overview on kind of the company's traction to date, as well as what some of those continued plans are for growth and development into the future.
Right. So we're still relatively small, relative to the market, obviously. We've got about 11,000 recurring monthly customers across our grocery chains. Um, and so, that's the limit of our traction a little bit. Like the capacity we have today in our farm, we can continue to optimize and continue to get more yields out of that farm capacity. But there is a cap on that. So you really need to build up more capacity before you can, have bring on a lot more grocer doors. And so we can sort of flatten that out because that's a very chunky trajectory over time. You got to raise money, build out your infrastructure, bring on new customers. So it's very, it's like a big step function. And so we can slowly smooth that out by working with co-packers to do other innovative products like the tinned mushrooms, for example. So that's kind of our strategy there. But in terms of large growth over time and increasing our capacity, we like to call it our copy and paste growth strategy. We've spent a long time now, sort of de-risking the technology, frankly, a lot longer than we ever anticipated it would take. But we're at the point now where we can now do that copy and paste in a pretty much de-risked way. So that's the next big step for the company.
That's great. Are there kind of any next spots in Canada that you guys are looking to bring the product to market?
So early on, we thought we would have farms across the country, but we're in Cornwall for a few very strategic reasons. We're on the 400 series of highways, so easy access to essentially the largest market in Canada. So you can buy in Ontario and Quebec, and that's I think 60% of the population of Canada, and so we can access that from Cornwall. The biggest reason we're in Cornwall, of course, is that Cornwall gets its power from Quebec. So it's renewable hydropower, which allows us to have a truly sustainable profile compared to the product that's being imported from 5,000 kilometers away. Um, so, yeah.
Okay, no, appreciate you yeah, giving more of an overview there. The fact that you guys are yeah, getting your power from Quebec that just aligns with the company vision quite a bit, vision and mission, so that's great.
Yeah.
Now, shifting the focus a little bit to your role as president and co-founder, obviously your leadership plays a pivotal role in the company's growth and success. So I always love to just ask, leaders of a company if they can share a little bit about their philosophy on leadership and how they bring that sense of inspiration and motivation to their team.
So I honestly try to stay out of the way as much as possible. Especially now that we've actually brought on a new CEO focused on our operations, while I focus more on product and brand and corporate development. But my philosophy is certainly centered around kindness, and allowing people to do their jobs, letting them fail, letting them succeed, but being there to support when needed, and especially like moving any large object standing in their way, so they can do their job and they can succeed. But I find that kindness and really having people's backs are pretty good motivators.
Absolutely, I would agree. I think it creates a great environment for people to thrive and really become their best selves in the role as well. So I think that's a great philosophy. Another question I always like to ask is just if there's been a defining moment in your company's journey so far, either kind of like a moment where everything maybe seemed to change or there was a turn in momentum, or even just maybe a favorite moment that you've had so far on, the incredible ride of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I think I'll go with a favorite moment. It's been a real roller coaster for sure, since the beginning. The challenges have certainly been real. But one of my favorite moments was really, we got an email, probably the first email we got, I would say, from a customer. And this was back in the early days of COVID, with the crazy 18-hour days, working on the farm floor, super exhausted. And I got that email from a customer and immediately showed it to Patrick, our head of operations, who spent most of his career managing really large grocery stores. And he said to me, never in all my years working in grocery stores did any customer ever take me or my staff aside and say, you know what, that lettuce you're carrying, I just love it. Um, and when he said that, it really hit home that we were doing it right.
It's amazing. I think, as you noted earlier, oftentimes leafy greens are treated more as a commodity product, and there's less of that brand affinity that you get. So the fact that, yeah, not only do you have that great story from one customer, but that you hear that feedback often from customers is really incredible, and I'm sure just creates so much brand loyalty for the other kind of product mix that you have as well, which is great.
That's it.
Yeah, I know you mentioned life as an entrepreneur can always be a bit of a roller coaster. It's just a crazy journey, and something I always like to just check in on with entrepreneurs and business leaders is, when you finally have a minute or two where you might not be working, what is it that you love to do?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not young anymore. So certainly that balance is a more important piece of my, let's call it, entrepreneurial journey. My wife and I love to travel. I'm an ocean lover and sort of need it regularly for my mental health. We've got two kids, so that certainly takes up, a lot of the non-working hours. But I guess I'm a tennis player in the summer, skier in the winter. And a recovering musician. And I try to find time to listen and play music as much as I can.
That's amazing. Are there any ocean travel destinations you'd recommend that are kind of on the top of your go-to list?
Well, I can't talk about it because then it.
Then it'll get too
uh,
busy, I know.
we certainly enjoy Costa Rica a lot. That's for sure.
That's awesome. Well, switching the focus back to kind of the company and the capital raise that you guys are doing. I know you had mentioned, I believe it was 2018 that you did your first raise. You're raising on FrontFundr now. I know you've kind of set aside a portion of the round for FrontFundr. So would love to hear a little bit about just what your experience has been raising capital so far and what
Yeah.
your goals are with this round of kind of community capital fundraising through FrontFundr.
So I guess like prior to Fieldless, I hadn't really done anything like this. Everything I had done had really been self-funded. Even when I started my agency in the early days. Uh, so I had worked with other organizations that have raised VC money, but I had never kind of led that process. So doing it with Fieldless is certainly kind of new to me. But luckily, one of our co-founders was super experienced on that front. So it was kind of like a let's say a crash course in capital raising. It was a good one. To date, I think we've raised around 20 million in equity. Um, and so with FrontFundr, we're continuing an existing raise. So we raised about 1.9 million already in this round, and we're looking to FrontFundr to raise the balance up to 3 million. And we really loved the idea of FrontFundr. When it was presented to us, it just seemed to fit so perfectly with the kind of company we are, and the legions of lettuce fans we've been growing, and giving them an opportunity to be a part of the company's success.
No, that's fantastic. That's a big part of really where this form of fundraising excels is all those people who love the product, who love the company, are able to come in and join on really the crazy journey as co-owners, which otherwise they wouldn't have had for most of them the opportunity to do so. So that's really great. I think as well, you guys have offered some nice perks on the campaign for investors. I saw the cute lettuce bee hats and some of the swag there, which are great.
That's our
So.
it's our very Canadian subtle jab at the administration across the border.
Very well done. Very well done. No, it's all came together really well, and I think it's yeah, such a great opportunity for your community and those who even have yet to discover the company to be able to join as investors as well, which is great. I guess with the fundraise in mind, are there kind of any specific objectives with the use of funds that might be worth sharing with investors?
Um, Yeah, I mean you can look on the content on the our FrontFundr page, but it's really a combination of working capital and getting our spinach farm up and running and producing, so that we can hit our EBITDA positive economics, and then at that point we'll pursue a much larger growth plan.
That's very exciting for sure. And yeah, definitely recommend those listening. Check out the campaign page. There's a great overview on some of that there. And the video gets into some of those plans as well, which is fantastic. So as we kind of are wrapping up today, I always like to ask entrepreneurs if there's a quote or a piece of advice that maybe has stuck with you throughout your career or continues to guide you on this journey.
Yeah, sure. I think there's probably a lot of them, but for some reason, the one that has never left my brain, since it was told to me by a mentor a long time ago, is really perfect is the enemy of good.
Mm.
Whether you want to say start by starting, or however you want to phrase it, but you just can't get mired down in trying to get things perfect before moving forward.
It's great advice. It's definitely something I have echoed to myself over the years as well. It's better to get started, to get something out than to fixate on things to the point where you don't end up, launching
Doing
or
anything. Yeah.
starting. Absolutely. So I think that's a great one for sure. And as the last question here for today, really love to leave, with a focus for investors. So if you could leave investors with three things to take away about your company, what would it be?
Sure. I guess the first is that we're building for the long term. Indoor agriculture is inevitable. It all depends on who's going to succeed at it, but it is going to happen. Over the last 40 years, like here's a little anecdote I like to tell people. Over the last 40 years of the last century, romaine lettuce yields in California per hectare increased by 100%. So if you think about that, it's pretty crazy. That is a lot. But since then, since the turn of the century, they've actually decreased. I think the data was by 2016, they had come down about 16%. And that's very much due to weather events, problems of outdoor growing. A big part of it was that society started to catch on to the use of heavy pesticides and no longer would tolerate it. And so they had to kind of curtail the use of them, which also brought yields down. So the key here is that, like, I truly believe that the indoor farming companies building capacity today are building a platform on which to improve over time. Just like farmland got more valuable, farm indoor capacity is going to get more valuable because we're going to continue that trajectory of the last century of improved efficiencies and actually probably see more of a hockey stick to that graph as well. So that's a key point I want to I'd like to make. The second, I guess, is that Canada is the best market in the world to do a business like this. I truly believe that. We've got a combination of clean power. As I said, we get ours from our renewable hydropower from Quebec. Um, and we have a very challenging climate for horticulture, which is unlike a lot of countries in the world. And we have a population that generally favors buying local when it's available. And obviously, as you said, like that sentiment is now stronger than ever. And then I guess the third thing is, really around the brand concept. Once you build a cherished brand, you create a lot of options for yourself compared to slotting yourself in as a commodity producer. It's easier said than done, of course. But you have to have a product that builds trust and that delights customers. And once you do that, you've got optionality. We know a lot of customers seek us out. Many actually choose to go to the grocers that have us because we're there. We know that. We're still really small, but we believe we punch above our weight in that regard. And in the markets that we're in, we've truly created fans for our product. And I think that's an awesome foundation to build a company.
That's amazing. I think those are some great points to leave investors with for sure. And for those who do want to learn more, you can do so at frontfundr.com/fieldless. As I mentioned, they've got a great campaign video giving an overview of what they do, what their plans are for the future. And there are also some awesome perks for investors to check out. So definitely recommend that you do. And yeah, Jon, thank you so much for being here today and telling more of your story and the journey with Fieldless. Definitely appreciate you sharing that with the listeners today.
Very much. It was fun to do. And I guess I'd just end by saying, we've really been thrilled at the power of FrontFundr so far. I think it's already kind of exceeded our expectation in terms of the pace of the raise. And I just think there's a lot of power in the platform.
Well, appreciate that very much. And I will say your campaign has been off to a great start with its launch. So very excited to see how this continues for sure.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. For anyone new to the podcast, FrontFundr is Canada's leading equity crowdfunding platform, enabling all Canadians to invest in the most exciting startups and growth stage companies, something that was previously only available to the 1%. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter so you can have your questions answered in an upcoming episode. This podcast episode is for informational purposes only and should not constitute financial advice. Investors should conduct their own due diligence on any investment they may be considering on FrontFundr. For details of any offering listed on FrontFundr, refer to the offering document on their campaign page at www.frontfundr.com.